that. But welcome to year 2 of scoring and peer review. I don't know how many of you all went through the process last year, but we're going to just talk through the basics of scoring and peer review with a little bit of reminder about what PBB is. And then we'll have plenty of time for questions for any of you who have it. Okay, so we break out the scoring phase of PBB into 2 pieces. Scoring, which is from the department side, and peer review, which is from the results side. So we'll look a little bit at department scoring. So the first step of the scoring phase is to have departments self-assess their programs. This determines from the department perspective how programs align with the goals of the city. So we are asking those of you who are subject matter experts on your own programs to go through the alignment process. We have you review all of the results and definitions, evaluate each program against those results and definitions, and it's on a scale of influence on the successful achievement of each result. This process happens in the online PBB tools, and then the scoring rubric is a 0 to 4 scale. A score of 0, meaning that that program has no influence on the successful achievement of the result, all the way up to a 4, where that program is essential to the successful achievement of that result. So that's phase 1. Then we move into phase 2, and that's the peer review step. And this step is my favorite step, but it is to evaluate each of the scores that comes through from the department to ensure fairness and a consistent application of the scoring rubric. So we create teams of cross-functional people, so people who are not necessarily experts on the programs, but we ask that they become experts on the result that they are assigned to. So this validates the scores that come in from the departments, and it applies that consistent and fair application. So teams are asked to validate whether or not the score is correct. If they, as a team, feel that the score needs to be adjusted, then they will recommend a change. So we're looking for group consensus with a consistent approach, and then one of the best measures of that is to compare programs within one score to ensure that they have the same influence on the successful achievement of that particular result. This happens on an Excel template, which Danielle will provide to you when we get to the peer review phase. But just for...
will you pause for just a second? I just want to make sure that the distinction between the 2 processes makes sense. So in phase 1, you as the department are saying, this is how my program scores against all of the criteria, whereas in the peer review, we're going to say, Anthony, you're looking at infrastructure and asset management, so go through all of the programs that are scored against that and make sure that those align. Does that kind of make sense? So one, you're looking program, how it compares to everything, whereas in the peer review, you're saying, I'm just going to focus on this one component of our scoring matrix. Does that make sense? Okay, I just wanted to make sure. We have a couple new people in the process. So thanks, Liz. You can keep on going.
That's fine, and stop me at any point, so no problem at all. Just for those of you who are new to the process, I'm going to do a very brief 5-slide review of PBB. So this is super high level, and if there are questions, please stop and ask me. But we essentially break out priority-based budgeting into 3 questions. What do we do? What does it cost? And why are we in business? The what do we do piece is addressed by the programs that you all have identified within your department and as an organization holistically. The programs tell the story of the city of Lawrence. Then we take your line items and they are allocated to the programs. So we now have a total cost for each of the services or programs that you provide, both to the community and internally to run your organization. And the why are we in business piece is connecting those programs to the strategic plan or mission or business plan, whatever you all have utilized to create your results. This is the connection point. This is the alignment of your programs to those identified results. So From the program stage, this is kind of the backbone of PBB. It's the first step that we ask you all to go through, and that is to identify what it is that you all provide both internally to help the organization and externally to help the community. Programs are the discussion points and backbone of all of PBB going forward. These are just some examples. So when you ask, what do we do? You know, the program names that you identify will answer that question. The second step is the cost allocation. So we allocate all of the line items to your programs, and this is going to be a phase that will be helpful in decision making and communicating. So after you have allocated all of your line items to programs, you now have a total cost of programs, and you can break that out by personnel costs or the time people are spending on their programs and the operational costs. So you will now know where you spend your time, where staff is spending their time, what is the total program cost, and then you can also start to examine if something has cost recovery or has any sort of grant funds. So the phase that we're focusing on today is the results or scoring phase. So a year ago or so, some results were identified based on your strategic plan. Those results are going to be used throughout the scoring and peer review phase. We have overarching results and then definitions that support those results. This is going to allow you to ask the questions of, once we've gone through scoring and we have that consistent and fair application of all of the results and final scores, you'll be able to look at your programs and say that they are in high alignment or low alignment with the overall results or with individual results, so that you can better assess where you might like to spend more time or increase a service level. If you had new resources, where would you want to apply those to most positively impact your organization? Maybe you identify a program that you are spending too much on and you never realized that, and you would want to reallocate some of your time or resources away from that to another program to more positively impact the city. So those are some of the questions we can ask after we go through the scoring phase. So the results are unique to the city of Lawrence. Those are things that we've identified as important priorities for your city. Now, we also have another aspect of scoring, which deals with the basic program attributes. These are provided by ResourceX to help you further describe your programs. So oftentimes in strategic plans, there is not a question of whether or not you have to provide a program, whether it's mandated, whether the demand for that program is increasing or decreasing. Those are the types of things that we can assess with the basic program attributes. So the 5 basic program attributes are mandate, reliance, demand, population served, and cost recovery. Now, the City of Lawrence has also added a 6th basic program attribute of equitable access. And that that actually is, I believe, unscored in the City of Lawrence, but it's simply to identify those programs that impact equitable access. So from the basic program attributes, we can learn whether or not you're required to offer the program, whether there are others in the community who offer a similar type of service, whether there's been an increase or decrease in demand for that program or service, whether you receive any sort of specific revenue that's tied to that program, and then who benefits from the program. And we talk about the population served externally for how it influences the community. And then if it's an internally facing program, the population served would be the internal organization. So that is a very, very high level overview of PBB. Are there any questions about just the steps involved?
Liz, I have a quick question for you. I know last year you had kind of a matrix that defined each of those basic program attributes. Will you go over that, or is that something that when you send me the PowerPoint, would you also include that? I think that's really helpful because it gives a little bit more guidance on each of those BPAs.
Absolutely. So I don't actually have the matrix in this slide set, but when we jump into the tools, one, I will show you where you can access that during the scoring process. But then Danielle, yes, I can absolutely include that. I'll just add a slide before I send it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. So in this scoring phase, we start with department scoring. And this is an incredibly important step in the scoring phase because nobody knows your programs better than you. So you are the experts and you are going to have information that you want to communicate both internally to the rest of the organization, but potentially to council in the community. So the program descriptions that you have in there are important, but also during department scoring, you are going to have the opportunity to insert comments as to why you scored something a certain way. So you may understand the influence your program has on a result better than anybody else in the organization. So during the department scoring, your focus is on your individual programs and how they align to each result. So you are going to take your programs through scoring against all of the results that are applicable. So if you have a community-facing program, you're going to score it against the 4 community results. If you have a governance or an internal-facing program, you're going to score it against, I believe, the 6 governance results. And then every single program will be scored against the BPAs. All of the scores are based on that same 0 to 4 scale that we talked about on the first slide. And it's the influence a program has on the ability to achieve that particular result. So again, a 0, no influence, and a 4 is essential to being able to provide or to achieve that result. So just some quick history on how we identified the results. These are from your strategic plan. The high-level results are less likely to change over time, though I do understand that you all are going through a strategic planning process, and we will address that if and when we need to. But then each of the results is supported by a definition. And I was telling Danielle before this meeting, 99% of our organizations have very similar high-level results. There is always safety, economy, infrastructure. Those always exist. And so those may feel like very high level, and it's the definitions that are under each of those results that are more unique to your organization. So this is where if there are priorities from a council and things change year over year, those can be reflected in the definitions that support each result. And how we use the definitions is when a program achieves this particular definition, the overall result is achieved. And we're going to do some practice with that in just a moment. But just for a refresher, these are your community or external facing results: commitment to core services, economic growth and security, infrastructure and asset management, and a safe, healthy, and welcoming community. On the other side, for internal facing, these are your governance results: civic engagement, collaborative solutions, fiscal stewardship, leadership, transparency and access to information, and workforce. So you will have these in the tools as you're going through scoring, but they're also in the slides for reference. Okay, so if we are talking about the department self-assessment, you are the subject matter expert for your programs, and you are going to determine the level of influence a program has on the ability to achieve the overall result. Some helpful tips as you're going through the scoring process is, reading each definition as you are applying it to each program. As you become more and more fluent with the results and definitions, it's not necessary probably to read each one of them out loud, but sometimes that is helpful. If the program influences most of the definitions, then you're looking at a higher score. If it doesn't influence most of the definitions, you're looking at a lower score. Now that is a best practice for kind of getting started, but there are certainly going to be cases where if your program is essential to the success of one of those definitions, and without that you would not be able to achieve the actual result, this is not a math problem. So you're not going to say, my program is influential on one particular definition, so it's a 1. we're going to actually look at the overall influence that program has. This is just a helpful place to start. Another helpful question is, if the program were simply not available anymore, would it significantly impact the ability to achieve the result? I have found this question to be the most helpful as you are working through whether or not you're looking at a higher score of a 3-4 or a lower score of a 1-2, that if that program was not offered anymore, would you still be able to achieve the infrastructure and asset management result, or the healthy, safe, and welcoming result? So looking at, if that program went away, would we still be able to successfully achieve the result? So those are just some helpful places to start. So this is just a little bit of practice as we are talking about getting into scoring. Economic growth and security is one of your result areas, and I pulled in a program that is going to need to be scored over the next few weeks, which is parking enforcement and system review. The program description that is associated is to provide parking control through enforcement, monitor parking inventory, and analyze and improve the parking system. So given just the program name and description, you all may have some sort of feeling as to how it's going to score against economic growth and security as a result. But before you enter a score, you want to take into account all of the definitions that support that particular result area. So does parking enforcement and system review influence individual prosperity? Does it help attract business? Does it support the local economy? Does it influence residential development and redevelopment? Does it take into account commercial development and redevelopment, or community evolution? So you'll want to read through each one of the definitions to determine the level of influence parking enforcement and system review has on each one of those definitions. So first question, does the program seem to influence most of these definitions? Second question, if the program went away, would you still be able to successfully achieve economic growth and security? So these are just helpful ways to approach each one. Again, the scoring rubric is 0, there is no influence, all the way to 4, which means it's essential to the success. Again, reading through each definition as you are applying your scoring. It's not a math equation, so just because it influences 3 of the 6 doesn't necessarily translate to a score of 3. You're still trying to determine that level of influence. I recommend working through each program one at a time. Whether you're approaching it by program or result, really try to focus in on the program that you are reviewing and not trying to assess other programs at the same time. Don't be afraid of an honest score. So there is not a single program in your inventory that's going to score a 4 across the board in every result in BPA. On the other side, there's not a program that's going to score a 0 across the board. So entering your honest assessment not only will help with the data that comes out of the tools, but it will also significantly improve your experience with peer review. So the final thing that I want to address is entering comments to explain your score. As you enter into the peer review process, you will find these comments to be invaluable, to have that department's perspective and feedback as to why they scored a program a certain way. And we're going to jump over to some slides from the tools so that you can see where to enter those comments.
And okay. Liz, while you jump over, I just want to emphasize that again. I will say we had a few departments, and I won't name them, that did this very, very successfully. And I think it was really helpful when we went through the peer review process, because some of those justifications, maybe the peer review wouldn't initially say, yes, that is a 3, but when you read the justification, I think it made a lot more sense. And so I think there was some kind of accommodating to that, to say, you know what, that's a really valid point, and I do agree with that now that that kind of justification has been laid out. So I would highly recommend, especially now that we have a third of the programs, I would encourage you to take a few minutes on some of those and kind of outline some of your justifications. During peer review, they also may say that's completely ridiculous. I don't agree with it, but I think it helps start that conversation and makes it a little bit easier for the peer review group. So I would highly encourage that this second go around.
And
yeah.
Categories, if there, we're not scoring it against each individual category, we're taking the totality of what those things are.
So you are taking it, so let's use like patrol for an example. You will take that program and you will score it against the core services, safe, healthy, and welcoming neighborhoods, infrastructure and asset management, and the economic growth and security. So you will score it against each of those four.
So it's like back, what I thought she was understanding is that you just score the whole thing.
Yes. Yes, that is accurate. And then, so what she had on that, those 6 different buckets, those were the definitions underneath the economic growth and security. Yep. So that's just helped to that's there to help guide some of those discussions. Yeah.
I think that matrix that you had last year, where it shows all of those definitions under each dimension, that definitely helps.
Okay. Yeah.
So
okay. Yeah, and I'll send that out in the follow-up email as well, so you have it all in one place. Yeah. All right, Liz, back over to you.
perfect. So for those of you who were a part of this last year, you have probably spent time in the tools, but just a reminder, this is where you will start your process when you enter the tools. This is the dashboard. You're going to click on the program scores icon. The website is listed here. We do recommend that you use Chrome. It's just going to be a much better user experience for you. Also, Safari is also a fairly good user experience. We just have had some issues with people getting kicked out of the tools and in Internet Explorer. And if you get kicked out after you've scored and made a lot of comments and those don't save, it is understandably very frustrating. Your username should be your email. If you have not been in the tools, then let Danielle know and I will make sure that you have a username and password, but everything else should be set up with your email address and whatever password you all decided to use. So once you have clicked on that icon, there are 2 approaches to scoring. You can either go through and score by program. So this is scoring one program against all of the results. So utilizing that same example that Danielle just did, if you have a patrol program and you choose to score that program by program, then you will go through and you will score patrol against the 4 results. If you choose to score by result, you will score all of the programs in your department inventory against 1 result. So I'll show you what that looks like. So if you're scoring by program, this is the home screen that once you've clicked on that scoring icon will appear, and you'll see we have 2 tabs, and we're going to start with the scoring by program. So this is what it looks like when you log in and click scoring by program. You can filter to find the programs that need scores. So if you click on that complete percentage, it will pull all of those programs that are lacking scores to the top of the table. And then once you've identified the program you want to score, you'll click update. This will take you to a scorecard. If you are scoring by program, you will see at the top the program name and the program description. You will want to confirm that you're scoring against the correct set of results. So if you think that you should be scoring against governance, let Danielle know, but you want to make sure that you're scoring against the appropriate result. And I do think I heard somebody say that having the matrix next to you while you're scoring was helpful. I would agree. Having it on another screen or printed out for easy reference is certainly helpful. So make sure you're entering the scores on the appropriate line. We do need a score of 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4. No question marks or NAs. We need to have that numeric value entered there. This is where you can enter your comments as to why you scored a program a certain way within each result. And then click save. Our scorecards do not save automatically. So please remember this as you are going through the process, to not X out of the scorecard box, but to click save. If you choose to score by result, you will click on the Score by Result tab, and it will pull up this screen, which has all of the results listed out with a red bar or a green bar next to it. If it's red, means that there are still some programs that need to be scored. If it's green, it means that you have completed that particular result. If you click on one of the result areas, it will pull up a different scorecard. So the scoring by result includes all of the definitions for that result at the top. Then you can enter your scores in the score column and enter your comments in the comment column. And then again, please remember to click Save. So there is not a right or wrong way to approach this. It's simply if you want to score one program against all of the results, so you want to really understand that program and score that one completely through, or if you want to focus on a particular result and score all of your program inventories against that one result. Either way is fine. It's just how you choose to approach and get through all of your programs. Okay, are there any questions about department scoring before we move on to peer review?
I have a question on the citywide program.
Okay, yeah.
And how department scoring will occur on those.
That is a good question. I think what we did last year is the PBB super users actually scored all of those, and then you still have the peer review process.
Okay.
So
The citywide programs department scoring
Yep.
won't occur.
no, you'll just focus on your individual department. Some of them may reach out with some questions, because a couple of them are very much like MSO and Parks and Recreation do this, so we had it as a citywide program. So there may be a few of those where we kind of reach out if there are those two kind of key departments and say, hey, what would you recommend?
Some of those, like the maintenance garage, where it's a citywide
Yep.
program, that would be high scoring for us as an essential
Yeah.
tie to some of those dimensions.
Right.
Or major.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll do those, but we may reach out with a few phone calls to say, hey, we know that you're a major component of this. What would be your recommendation? So yeah, expect those. That's a good question.
Scoring we did last year still there, we started.
It is still there, and it's more of a verification and review process. The one thing I do want to make sure that you guys are at least aware of is when we went through the combining of programs, whatever we picked as that parent program, that's the score that was pulled through. So a lot of those we finessed a little bit. We changed the definition a little bit. So you'll want to make sure and really review them, because it may not be an accurate reflection now that we've kind of redefined it a little bit. But yes, those scores will be there, and it'll be a review of them. Yep. Any other questions? Okay.
Great. Okay, so you have gone in, and as the subject matter expert for your programs, you have entered all of the assessments for your programs, and you have served as your department's expert for your programs. Now you are assigned to the peer review team for public safety, for example, and now we are asking you to become the subject matter expert for your result. This is looking at the city's entire program inventory holistically, with reference to one particular result area. And you are going to try to determine if all of the departments have accurately assessed their programs and that it makes sense for each program that fell into one of the scoring areas, if it fits with all of the other programs that fell into that same level of influence. So we're going to do a quick practice based on a different organization, but they had this program of general patrol. And if you look at the scoring breakdown, the sheriff's department for this particular general patrol program scored their program as a 0 in every result area except for safe and secure community. They assessed that there was no influence on any other result area except for safe and secure community. So we're going to go through as a peer review team and determine whether or not we agree with that. So I would say that off the bat, I agree that General Patrol is likely essential to the success for a safe and secure community, but I have questions about whether it has no influence on their other result areas. So let's take a look at what the description is for General Patrol. It is routine patrol responding to non-emergency and emergency calls for service. So I have a fairly good understanding of what this program is and does. So that's kind of the first question to ask during peer review. If a score feels really off, make sure that you read the program description and make sure that you don't need to go back to the department to really determine what the program is all about. Because that, if you don't understand what the program is or does, then that's a question for that department. Okay, so we have a fairly good understanding of what General Patrol is. Now let's look at the rest of their, we're gonna be, excuse me, I need to take a step back. We are gonna be serving on the peer review team for quality and affordable place to live and work. So if you are on the peer review team for quality and affordable place to live and work, and we know that General Patrol has scored a 0 from the department perspective, let's take a look at the definitions that fall into my particular area for result expertise and see if there are any other areas for influence for this General Patrol program. So first and foremost, just from a quick browsing of kind of the subheaders, I see safe community as a definition under quality and affordable place to live and work. So it fosters neighborhoods that encourage diversity, vibrancy, safety, and acceptance. So right there, I feel like General Patrol may have some influence and contribute to that. Under affordable housing, we see providing a safe, attractive, and consistently regulated community. I feel like there's probably some influence there. Without making you all sit through me reading everything else, I determined some level of influence on 4 areas in this one result. So I don't think that this has no influence on the successful achievement of the quality and affordable place to live and work. So in this same organization, the peer review team went through and saw the department score was 0. And based on the influence on 4 of the definitions under quality and affordable place to live and work, this peer review team determined that they felt like this should have scored differently. So we have read through the program and the program description, and we feel like we need to recommend a change to the overall score for General Patrol in quality and affordable place to live and work. One other way to assess this is to say, let's take a look at General Patrol scored as a 0 with respect to other programs that scored a 0 in that same result area. So under quality and affordable place to live and work, if General Patrol is truly a 0, it should have the same level of influence on achieving a quality and affordable place to live and work as print materials, as warehouse operations, as records management. So right off the bat, that does not feel like those are on the same level. So if we now take the perspective that the peer review team, I don't know if anybody wants to shout out what they think the peer review team returned as a score for General Patrol.
2.
I hear a 2. Okay, so I tend to agree with a 2 or a 3. This peer review team determined that it was a 4. And let me explain to you why I think for this particular organization, it did seem to be the right fit. Because now if we take a look at other programs that fell into this score of a 4, we have 911 emergency dispatch, emergency management, and that General Patrol program seems to fit a little bit better into that grouping of programs. So that's the type of consistency that we are looking for, is where does this program truly fit in with the other programs that scored similarly, and then the overall influence on that particular result. So looking at it from that perspective of, does it make sense that it scored a 0 with all these other 0s versus does it make sense that it scored a 4 with these other 4s? Okay, so that's going to be part of the steps that you all will take during peer review. You will be assigned to a result, so get to know your result and definitions. You're going to look at all of the programs on the template, and I think step one, the easiest step, is to determine those that you agree with. Then you can filter those out of your way. If there are programs that you don't understand what they are, then that's going to be something that you may want to go back to the department and find out a little bit more about that program. Once you have all of the information that you need, then you can start to go through and look at the programs and determine those that you had some questions about, whether you all can come to consensus as a team for a recommended change to that score. Then once you have that process started, what we are looking to do is to fill out the entire template with the scores that your team has determined to be consistent and fair based on both department scores, but also the holistic view from your result expertise level. So the template that you will have looks like this. And again, either I or Danielle will download this for you once we have all the department scores in, because we do need to have department scoring completed prior to starting peer review. But if you look, you'll have all of the department scores in one column. If you agree with the score, so let's say you agree that the community events from the Parks Department is in fact a 4, then you will simply enter a 4 in the peer column, reflecting that you agree. If you are recommending a change, you will simply enter a different value. We will need, again, a numeric score of 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4. So no, you can certainly, as you are working through this, enter question marks or NAs or comments, but we really do, in order for this to upload successfully, we will need an actual score. There is also a column, so if you see the department comments column right here, this is what we're talking about that you could utilize as you are assessing whether or not the department score is the correct score going through peer review. The department comments are found right here. And then there's a column to the right that is for peer review comments. So if you do, it doesn't matter if you agree with the score or you're recommending a change, if there is a perspective from the peer review team that you think is helpful to save for any sort of conversations following the final score calculation, then you can enter peer review comments in that column. So it could be a justification for why you recommended a change. It could be that you have a different understanding of the program and you want it noted there. But any sort of comments that you all have during peer review can be entered in that column. Once you have completed your template, then you will save it and send it back to Danielle, and we will get it uploaded to the tools. Okay, any questions about peer review?
I think for those of you that went through this process last year, I'll try to keep you kind of on that same team so that you have a little bit of history and background with that. So I think that hopefully will be helpful. And then we've had a couple new faces and some people who did it last year that probably won't do it this year. So we'll kind of try to sprinkle the new people into those other positions. But I will send out those peer review groups after I get all of the department scoring done and completed, because we can't really do anything until that's been completed. So that'll be a pretty firm deadline, but I will, in my email out to you all, I'll change those to give you a little bit more time to get that done, and then probably push out that peer review deadline a week as well, just so you all have a little bit more time to work with it. Is there anything else, Liz, that you have?
No, that is it. Danielle, I will add that basic program attribute information to the slides, and then I will send them over to you.
All right, perfect. And when I get that from Liz and the recording, I'll send out kind of one big update email. I'll also include the matrix in there. I think it's really helpful to have that printed off and sitting on your desk as you're going through the scoring. Are there any questions that you all have? No? All right. Well, thank you very much, Liz. I appreciate you taking the time to walk us through this today.